This is the Sunshine Cathedral perspective. Polls say white Christians least likely to believe in racism. This isn't that moment where I say to myself, Robert, fix your face.
Yeah.
Okay. 3 years after a national racial reckoning that followed the death of George Floyd at the hands of police, and 60 years after the March on Washington, America...
We're going to have to start over. I hear a problem with vibration.
I don't even have my phone with me.
Oh, it is. I'm sorry. I thought I turned it off. Back up, back up, back up, back up. Nobody wants me anyway. Nobody loves me. Darn, you got good ears.
It's loud over here.
Oh, it's because
okay.
it's in the chair on the...
I'm saying I'm 3
Microphone
feet away,
right
and I'm not hearing it.
I did not hear it.
I thought you were going to start over because Robert moved in his chair. All right, great. Okay. This is the Sunshine Cathedral perspective. Polls say white Christians least likely to believe in racism. Internally, I'm saying, Robert, fix your face. 3 years after a national racial reckoning that followed the death of George Floyd at the hands of police, and 60 years after the March on Washington, Americans remain divided on issues of race and discrimination. That is especially true among religious groups. Newly released data from the Pew Research Center has found these observations. In April, Pew asked Americans which was the bigger problem facing the country on matters of race. People overlooking racism when it exists or seeing racism in places where there isn't none. Overall, just over half of Americans said people not seeing discrimination where it does exist was a bigger problem. Just under half said people seeing discrimination where it does not exist is the bigger issue. Among religious groups, white Christians were most likely to say claims about non-existent racial discrimination were the bigger problem. Conversely, Black Protestants, non-Christian religious Americans, unaffiliated Americans, and Hispanic Catholics were more likely to say that not seeing racism when it does exist is the bigger problem. Divisions over issues of race have heated up among American Christians in recent years, as what some people call the woke war has pitted those who do believe systematic racism is an ongoing issue against those who do not. I mean, let's call a spade. In America, racism is what it is. It's part of the fundamental things that have been part of the bedrock, the sin of America. It's often been named. It's been racism around slavery and all that. It exists, and I think as I was thinking about this, the most thing I thought about was once when someone said to me is, "Oh, I just know you as Robert. I don't see your color."
Okay.
And my response to that person was, "Well, if you can't see my color, then you can't see Robert."
Right. Mm-hmm.
And we have some work to do. And I think so much of that goes on still to this day in so many different circles, and it just gotten wider and larger. But racism exists, and I think that how we address it, how we deal with those issues, is a part of the systematic issues that we still have to address today. You cannot legislate it out, you cannot rule it out. You have to find healthy ways to come together, have the conversation, and how we dismantle the systems of oppression, all these other isms that goes along with it.
Mm-hmm.
I went to seminary at Union Theological Seminary in New York City. It's a school long committed to social justice and inclusivity, and they at that time had expectations that a certain amount of the faculty would be LGBTQ, that the faculty would be gender balanced, that it certainly wouldn't be all white, it wouldn't even be all Christian. Those were the values, right? That we live in a diverse world, and our community should be diverse. And then all of New York City was supposedly our laboratory, right? And Dolores Williams was on faculty there. Her last year was my first year. How amazing!
Yeah,
that I got a moment of that. Basically the mother of or founder of womanist theology, taking the womanist theory of Audre Lorde and applying it to theology. And so she'd been there forever. She got her she was a union graduate, and then she'd been teaching forever, and it was finally time for her to retire. And we were having a panel discussion, faculty on the stage, students in the talking about white supremacy and racism, and she said, and this was meanwhile 20 years ago, 17 years ago. This was a long time ago, and she said then, "I'm so sick of this discussion." She said, "I've sat on this panel year after year." And we're still, and this is a good place. This is where people are trying to work on it. You know what I mean? It's, I'm so sick of this conversation. Well, now 20 years later, we're still having this conversation.
Yep.
So yeah, the conversation is what's needed, but somehow we're not doing it right. Yeah. We're not doing. And when you said what was, I forget the title now. When white people don't believe that what I heard was, this is why I can't remember. That's why I can't remember, because what I heard was racists deny racism. That's what I heard.
Yep.
And so I can't remember what the proper thing was now, but yeah, that if the people with the most privilege and power get to decide what racism is and who's affected by it, it's never gonna get better.
Right. And that actually kind of goes back to the question, what you were reading, Robert, is seeing racism where it doesn't exist. Guess what?
Yeah.
Guess what? It's there.
Yeah.
It's there. Whether you see it or not,
Yeah.
it's there.
And we all have in our DNA, educational DNA,
Absolutely.
that the Episcopal Divinity School that we all,
Yes.
and they had a deep commitment to anti-racism and anti-oppression work. And and I just still today, it's just a part of that training, that deconstructing. All of that is still so much a part of my DNA, and alumni that we still talk about. We talk about how much we miss those discussions, and how those discussions led to interactions, and how that led to combating different things along our church journey. But at the same time, it's like you got to keep having a discussion. And yeah, if you look at one group and say this about another group, if the bear's painting the picture, the bear's going to have his foot on the man. If the man's painting the picture, the man's going to have his foot on the bear. But let's talk about who the painter is.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, that's a great analogy. I really like that.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, and that just over half of America is white, and just under half of Americans think that racism isn't a problem.
Yeah.
That's not. That,
yeah, that's
that
not
shows
apple and oranges.
that
That's
shows
just,
a devastating lack of progress.
Still got work to do.
Yeah.
Whole lot of work.
Well, we had, until the Civil Rights Act, we had our own version of apartheid.
Oh yeah.
And it was really only decades, less than 100 years before that we had chattel slavery. And we have not properly atoned or even admitted
No, we
that.
haven't.
We had a war in this country where people committed sedition, where they committed treason to defend the horrible institution of slavery. And people are still waving those flags. People erected monuments to honor that past in the 50s. It didn't happen when it was going on. They tried to resurrect the past with these monuments, and now are fighting tooth and nail when the monuments are coming down. That we still, not only have we not properly addressed and atoned for it, there are some that aren't even, they miss it. They're not ashamed of it. They think that's the way it ought to be.
Yeah, well.
And until we have a lot of healing, and I don't mean healing between this group and that. I mean, we have a lot of soul healing to do before this can have any chance of getting better.
And for so many, with the election of a certain president, that was supposed to have ended all levels and systems of racism. When President Barack Obama was elected president, that was supposed to end all of that. Because see how healed we are? See how wonderful we are now? We have our first black president. And that was supposed to end in all that. Meanwhile,
it energized the racists.
Yeah, it really did. It really did.
We're having a very different
We're at
conversation
right
now about how we look at racism in America.
And then he was followed by the antithesis of what he was, by someone who actually stoked the fires of racism. And so,
and it still continues.
back and forth. Here we are still.
Look at our political system now. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't somebody just recently say something about slavery and it being, I don't remember.
It was the governor of a state familiar to all of us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That there were benefits.
That's exactly what I was. Yeah.
That they learned
Remember
skills
exactly
or whatever.
Yeah. Like you got to be kidding me.
Taking one of the most evil experiences in human history and trying to polish that turd.
Yeah.
Rewrite it
making
now.
it look pretty, like it was a benefit.
And this is a leader in our state and country. And that's the problem.
Yep. We are excited to tell you about our next adventure with our Global Fellowship. In 2024, we'll be going to where the hills are alive as we explore Austria and Alpine Europe for Gay Oktoberfest. Space is extremely limited, so make sure to go to happeningout.travel/sunshine to reserve your space now.
Would you like to join the Queer God Squad on a special winter cruise in 2024? Well, now you can. You will visit Cozumel, Mexico, Grand Cayman, and Ocho Rios, and you can even add an open bar and Wi-Fi. Join us by going to happeningout.travel/sunshine.